Okay, so I'm Cynthia, and I am the host of the reality series, CPS the Horror Stories. I am not a social worker or an attorney, but I'm a mom who had a CPS case. My children were kidnapped, and I did get them returned after fighting for 2 years. But now I have this platform that I allow, or that I have, that people can share their story of their CPS case and shed light on the truth of the things that go on. So, Sarah, can you start by introducing yourself?
Hi, my name is Sara, and I live in the Bay Area and had my child removed, legally kidnapped from me. Um, and I'm just here to share my story with everybody.
Were you in the foster system as a child?
No, I did hear a story from my mom, though, that when we had lived at a previous address, um, that I had gotten out of the house. I was probably about a year or two that I had gotten out of the house and like crossed the street by myself and wanted to like play at the neighbor's house. And she had freaked out, came over and got me and gave me like a swat on the butt. And probably a few hours later, police officers showed up at the house and asked questions and stuff like that. But that's, as a child, that was the only interaction that my parents had as far as CPS goes.
What happened with it?
As far as I understand, nothing ever happened with it. Me and my sisters were never removed. No actual social workers showed up to the house. So it really went nowhere.
Okay, well, that's good.
Yeah,
um, so, tell me about your kids. How many you have and their age?
right. So I have my daughter who will be turning 6 in October. And then I have my son who will be 18 months in November.
October what for her birthday?
23rd.
Oh,
Yeah, mine's the 22nd, so
that's
it was
cool.
kind of cool to have her the day after my birthday.
Yeah, that's a great birthday present.
Yeah, that's what I tell people. The best birthday present I got.
Yeah. Um, so let's start. Tell me how this happened.
So, at the time I was living on a family member's property. They had what we called the cottage. It was just a little one bedroom, um, little house, I guess. And it was me, my fiance, who was only my boyfriend at the time, and my daughter. And everything was really normal and nothing was going wrong. And so we had gone to class at the college here in my hometown. And my daughter went to a daycare that was actually on campus. And so, we went about our day as normal. And, we go to pick her up about 3 or 3:30 in the afternoon on that day. And the teacher who was her teacher at the time, said that, the director of the site wants to talk to you. So I was like, all right. And I really didn't think anything of it, until I actually got into the office and he had said that, the teacher had reported suspicious bruising. He even used those air quotes, the suspicious bruises. And we had to call the police department and CPS. We had to report it to CPS. And, I just thought it was really strange because this was I think it was a Wednesday or a Thursday. And she went to school like every other day. And she had gone to school like on that Monday, and nothing had come up. Nothing was wrong. Nothing was said to me by the teachers. You're muted.
Sorry, that's weird. I don't remember doing that. Did you see these bruises?
I knew that she had bruises on her bottom, but she had fallen over the weekend. We had gone to see family members. We had gone to the park, and she had, I don't know exactly what fall it came from, so I couldn't tell, you know, I couldn't tell the social workers or the detectives, exactly where it came from. And they thought that that was suspicious, that, it was, they said that all of the bruises that she had, and granted at the time she had a lot of bruises, but I knew where some of them came from and others I didn't. Um,
What kind of bruising was this?
so there were some on her bottom and there were some on her legs, which later on, a pediatric doctor had said were normal for her age group. And at the time, I had had a nail shape that probably wasn't the best for myself because of the way that I interacted with my daughter at the time. They were almond shaped nails. They were long and they were like almond shaped. And instead of using the pads of my fingers to tickle her, I used the nails. And if she asked me to stop, I would stop. But it ended up leaving little bruises on her upper rib cage, like right under her armpit. So she had some on both sides. And my fiance would do like the airplane with her. And so there were like little bruises on like the sides of her belly button. I knew exactly where those came from. And I told CPS that, these are exactly where these bruises came from. Was it a smart decision to use my nails? No. And there was no way that it was not an intentional thing to leave bruises on either side of her belly button. So, they thought it was suspicious. But when they would ask me where bruises came from on like her bottom or her legs, and I told them I don't know, they would just give me these weird looks like, you should know exactly where every single bruise on your child comes from. And like I said, later on, it was told to CPS, it was put in a report, it was told to the courts that all of the bruises from her waist down are consistent with her age group. Um, so, I had just.
But when I'm saying, like, what did the bruises look like?
They
Were
were light
they
bruises. They were not like, they weren't dark. They were small. They weren't like these huge bruises. Like if somebody were to hit you somewhere, like they weren't like these huge bruises. They were small, consistent with like the ones on her sides were consistent with what I had told them, because that's exactly where they came from. And the ones on her legs or on her bottom, like I told them, I don't know like where they came from. They didn't come from us. And for the last 3 years we have consistently told them, we did not abuse her.
right?
So it was, they just kind of went with the way that they were thinking, like all of these bruises had to have come from you or come from your fiance, when that wasn't the case at all.
Right.
But the day that she was removed, I got interviewed by a detective at the child care site. I had to wait an hour. It was like an hour before I even talked to anybody. Um, and then when I went back outside to go to my vehicle, they asked me if I would go down to the police station and answer some more questions. And before this, I had had no negative interactions with CPS or with any kind of officer at all. Um, so it was just, I was like, I was always told as a child, you know, if a police officer is asking you questions, just cooperate. So that's what I did. So I was like, yeah, okay, I can go down to the station and answer some more questions.
Right.
And apparently they had asked my fiance to do the same thing. So it was like, okay, these social workers are going to take your child. And I was not served with any kind of court paperwork saying that they were removing my child at that time. Even at the police station, when they had placed me under arrest for child abuse, um, I didn't see any kind of, you know, any kind of document saying that they
Right.
were taking my child from me, like they were going to be placing her anywhere. Um, so, like I said, they placed me under arrest, and they wanted to charge me with felony corporal injury to a child.
Where was this? Where did this take place?
In Napa County,
But I'm saying, where were you when this happened?
the police station.
Okay, so they called you to come into the police station.
Yeah, they had asked me at the child care center on the college campus, like, hey, can you come to the police station with us so we can ask you some more questions? Um, and like I said, as a child, I was always told to cooperate with police officers, so that's what I did. I told them, you know, yeah, that's fine.
And I'm sure in your head you were thinking you have nothing to hide.
Exactly. That's exactly what I was thinking. I don't abuse my child, so why would I think anything was wrong at that point?
Right.
Um, you know, and that was actually the last time. That was actually the last time that my fiance, oh my Lanta, excuse me,
Okay.
that was the last time that my fiance had actually seen my daughter in person.
Is it not his daughter?
No. And so when I went to go fill out paperwork, after I had been released from, because I made bail, um, and a few days later, I went in and was filling out paperwork with CPS. And I told them, you know, her biological father has nothing to do with her. He only pays child support. And, you know, my fiance is the one who has been taking care of her for the last year. Because we had been dating for a full year at that point. Um, and, you know, she knew him as her dad. Like, she calls him daddy to this day.
When did he come in her life?
But it was just after she had turned 2. Uh, so she turned 2 October of 2017, or 3 of 2017, and then she in 2016 she had turned 2, and then a month later, me and my, because we had been talking for a while before that. But he had come into her life about a month after she had turned 2, when we had officially started dating. And so for that full year, you know, he had been helping take care of her. He had been helping drop her off and pick her up from school. You know, when he felt comfortable enough, he would, you know, help her jump into the bathtub and, you know, help her wash herself, because she was 2 and 3 at the time. So he was just there to make sure that she cleaned herself well enough and helped her wash her hair and whatnot, for bath times.
And
And
you said you weren't there.
it was, you know, we would, if I was doing like homework or something, he would
Yeah.
just help her get into the bathtub,
Yeah.
just to make sure that, you know, she washed herself properly and well enough to where she wasn't gonna, you know, get any kind of infection or anything
And
like
like you
that.
said, he's been in her life since she was a baby, a toddler, you know.
Yeah, since she was 2.
Right.
Yeah. And so, like I said, when he felt comfortable enough to do that, he was like, you know, you continue to do your homework and I'll help her get into the bath and make sure she does what she needs to do. And nothing was wrong, you know. But you know, and so she knows him as her dad. You know,
Right.
that's who she calls daddy. That's the person who cared for her. That's the person who loved her as his own. You know, and he hasn't been able to see her in person. Like, he would drop me off at visits and he would see her go inside, but that was it. Like, he couldn't say hi to her, he couldn't talk to her, he couldn't go up and give her a hug, nothing. And still hasn't been able to. um, so it's been really hard on him as well.
Yeah, it sounds like it. I mean, it's almost like they're telling him or treating him like he wasn't a parent because
Well, right,
he's
yeah, well,
not
they had,
biologically her father.
yeah, when they had first removed her, they wanted to put the abuse on both of us. And then when I started my case plan, he had started it with me. Like, he did the parenting class, he did the therapy, he did the codependency class. There was one class that he wasn't able to do because we couldn't afford it, for us to be able to pay out of pocket for him to do it. Um, and that was the only thing on my case plan. He followed my case plan with me to help CPS realize, like, you know, we want her home and he should be allowed to be around her. And once they realized, you know, that he did care for her so much and that he wanted to be a parent to her, they flipped it to where, oh, he's the abuser and you just let it happen. And then they would sit there and say, oh, you're choosing him over your daughter, and basically telling me straight up, like, I had been told by multiple social workers, including a supervisor, oh, you have to break up with your boyfriend or you're not going to get your daughter back. And I had told all of the social workers, and including my lawyer at the time, like, he's doing all of this stuff too, but they don't want to look at it. And it was just really suspicious that they didn't want to look at it and make it out like I was choosing a man over my child, when
Yeah.
that wasn't the case at all, because he wanted to be around her and he wanted to be a parent to her. So they made it out in the courts like I was choosing him over her. And my lawyer didn't bring up the fact that he had done all of this other stuff, um, you know, that he had done the parenting. We both did 2 parenting classes, and he did a codependency class. He did therapy, and he signed release forms so they could talk to his therapist and get information from them. You know, what the therapist was allowed to divulge to a social worker. He signed all of these release forms like I did for the social workers. Contacted anybody about the classes or um, his therapist, and so they just made it out like
Set up
he
for
was the
failure.
abuser. Yeah. And so, you know, I had done everything that they had asked me to do except break up with my fiance, because I didn't think that, one, they have no say in that, you know, especially since all of them know that he's taking these classes and doing the same things I'm doing. They all knew that, including the supervisor and my lawyer, and they didn't care. And then 2, because he was taking those classes, I knew that he was going to be a good. I had found out in October of 2018 that I was pregnant with my son, and they were still trying to get me to break up with him. And I told them straight up, you know, no, I'm not going to do that because you guys are going to spin it. And that social worker didn't like that I said that, because I knew what they were going to be doing, because they had done it so many times before. And, you know, because him and I had talked about it. He's like, you know, I'm not moving out. I'm not going to be doing this. I'm not doing it, because they are going to spin it, and they're probably going to spin it like, oh, well, he left while she was pregnant. Oh, he must be this awful person. And we were just like, and I agreed with him, you know, like,
Right.
because he's not this good person. He's an amazing father to our son, and he was an amazing father figure to my daughter. So there, you know, it was just, they were spinning everything that they could to make him look like the bad guy, and that I was choosing him over her, so they could get everything that they wanted from the judge.
So let's go back to the first day.
Okay.
And so you went to the police station.
Mm-hmm.
And tell me again what happened. They questioned you. Did they question?
So they were questioning me, and while they were questioning me, they took my daughter to the ER and had photographed my daughter, the bruises on her. And they brought the pictures back, and you know, the detective is like tossing them on the table and is like, well, what do you say about these? What do you say about these? And in the report that CPS wrote, they had wrote that the detective said that I was like emotionless.
Yeah.
And I was like, no, that's not the case at all. I was livid. I was so angry that, one, they took my daughter, who was not removed from my custody at that point. They had taken my daughter to the doctor without my knowledge, without my consent, and then they photographed her without my knowledge and without my consent. I was livid.
Has the biological father been involved?
No. So this happened in November of 2017. The first time they got a hold of him was mid-December of 2017. they terminated his services at the 6-month review hearing.
Why?
Well, because one, he wasn't taking part in any kind of case plan. He wasn't in contact with them. He wasn't in contact with her, with my daughter, or with the foster parents / my parents, because she was in a foster home and then she got moved to my parents, which is a whole nother can of worms. It's ridiculous. And he just, nothing. He hasn't contacted me, CPS, or my parents about her, about my daughter at all. And neither has his wife.
So, okay, because you didn't blow up and have a crying fit, you're emotionless. Is that?
Yeah, apparently.
What was that? Emotion.
It was just the fact that they had the gall to sit there and say that I was just blank-faced. I was emotionless. I had no emotional reaction to the bruises that were on my daughter. And I even told the social worker at one point, it was brought up about all of this stuff, that I was this emotionless, heartless person. And I told them, that wasn't the case at all. I was angry.
Right.
And they didn't care. They didn't put that in a report. They didn't say anything about that, in court. That, oh, well, this is what happened on that day. And, because they're not going to recant anything that they say to,
Somebody's asking, was or is your daughter anemic?
So at the time, before she was removed, I didn't know whether or not she was, because she was still a little too young to be tested.
Yes.
Because I had brought it up to my son's pediatrician when he turned 1. Can we test for that? When can we test for that? But when my daughter was removed, she was not tested for it. She had been placed in a foster home where they ate on the healthier side. Like, they had a lot of green salads and all of the iron-rich foods.
Yeah.
They were more of the health nut people, I considered them. And so when I had brought it up, because I am anemic, I have been tested a total of 3 times. One when I got into boot camp for the military, another when I got to my command, and then another when I went to get medical through the Veterans Affairs, the VA office around where I live. And all of them, I have been either anemic or borderline. So when she got moved to my parents, she got another full physical. And it was about a month or so after she had been moved to my parents that they did the full physical. And so when they did test her for anemia, they did end up finding that she was borderline anemic at that point as well. And they had actually prescribed her liquid or iron tablets. So yeah, at one point I don't know if it's still that way, because my parents did end up switching their diet around a little bit to include more iron-rich foods. But at the time that she was moved to my parents, there was an anemia issue because she was prescribed stuff for it. So, which means she probably was before she was removed from my home. So, and when that was brought up, CPS had basically pushed it off, like, oh no, she's not she's not anemic. She's doing great. She's with the foster parents. She has all of these great foods, which was great, you know. But then when she had her full physical at my parents', and it was found that she was borderline anemic, just like I have been, they didn't want to bring that up in court either. And my attorney didn't bring it up either. So, um, you know, and then at the time, I was always told, you know, don't talk in court. Um, only I was actually told by my attorney, only the attorneys talk in court unless somebody is specifically spoken to who is not an attorney. Um, which I later found out that I should have said something in court when my lawyer wouldn't bring up things. Um, so, um, yeah.
How did your fiance do with being, did he get questioned or did you just get questioned for him?
So the first day, the day that she was removed, he did get questioned by police as well. And he was actually arrested as well for the same charge. It was the felony corporal injury to a child. So he was arrested. We combined what money we had left for the month because we had paid our bills. It was only like the first week of November at that point when she was removed. So we had just paid all of our bills. So we had to combine the money that we had left for the month to bail me out. And we didn't have enough to bail him out. So he ended up spending, it was a Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday that he spent in jail, and he was released that Monday afternoon. And we fought in criminal court for 2 years. And we still ended up with a misdemeanor child endangerment charge because we didn't trust the people in our hometown because of a previous case that one of the lawyers we had overheard some lawyers talking about a previous case where the jury literally were only out for half an hour and convicted the person, even though the information that she gave was just randomly generated in her head. I think it was like some license number that she had just randomly generated in her head, and she had gotten a identity theft charge, and they convicted her of that. So we just didn't trust anybody who would have been on a jury to actually listen to the facts of our case. And, you know, because we were facing, because they had added a second charge because of a picture on my fiance's phone.
What was it?
There was one point before she was removed that we had, because when I moved into on my family's property, it was a fully furnished little cottage and everything, and there was this big old giant dinosaur TV, like it had a granite top. So we had moved that, and we were waiting for my dad to be able to help us move it to a junkyard. And so, you know, my fiance and my daughter were playing, and she had like started falling towards this television. And instead of letting her hit her head and cause any kind of damage to her head, to her brain, whatever, my fiance grabbed her arm. It ended up being that he did grab too hard and did leave like a full handprint on her arm. And there was one
A,
day as
like
it was healing,
a red handprint or a bruised handprint?
it ended up coming up as a bruise.
A
It
whole
was like
hand?
I'm sorry?
The whole hand?
It was mostly just the fingers, but you could definitely tell it was like the four fingers and the thumb. And he felt so bad about it. He did. And when he saw the bruise for the first time, he teared up because he felt so awful about it. But there was one day that I was in school, and he was just getting her ready for the day. And he had noticed that the bruise, he's like, what do you want me to put her in? Do you have a specific outfit that you want her to wear today? And I was just like, what does the bruise look like in a short sleeve shirt? And we're texting back and forth. And so he had sent me a picture of her arm, like where the bruise was at on her arm. And then he had put the shirt on and showed me where it laid on her arm, because I was really worried that people were going to get the wrong idea, and I didn't want people to get the wrong idea. So I told him, well, just don't put a long sleeve shirt on her. If a short sleeve shirt covers it, it'll be fine, basically. And and that was my thinking at the time, because I remember it. And because it was so hot that day, and I didn't want her wearing a long sleeve shirt and getting any kind of like heat stroke or anything like that, or heat exhaustion. So when the police officers were going through our phones, they found those text messages and did exactly what I was afraid of and got the wrong idea. So they put a second felony charge on us. And so when we were continuously fighting in criminal court, it started out as one, and then they added the second charge, which was just a second corporal injury to a child felony charge. And, like I said, we just didn't trust a jury of our peers to hear our facts about how we don't abuse her. We even had a specialist, or it was my fiance's lawyer who brought in a specialist, and he was going to bring this person in to testify for us that there is no way to tell an abuse bruise from a playing bruise. Granted, there are those ones where you can tell, like, if it's fingers or anything, but
Listening, but I need to throw up, okay?
okay.
Go ahead.
And she was saying, as far as the bruises that I've seen, there's no way to tell whether or not they're bruises. But we ended up settling on the misdemeanor charge of child endangerment, and we only ended up getting 4 years probation. We have to do a 1-year parenting class and just some court fines. But I mean, it could have been a lot worse. We could have spent 5+ years in prison if we had ended up going to trial and getting convicted of both of these charges. So we both, my fiance and I, have since day one, have maintained that we don't abuse our children.
Oh, I
You know,
don't
at the time it was
think they were.
just my
I don't.
daughter, but
I don't think
you know,
they
it's been
were.
almost 3 years now, and we still to this day maintain that we have never abused,
No, I don't
you
think.
know, my daughter, and we don't abuse our son.
Can you hear
Um,
me?
and they still to this day say, you know, you're not fit to have your child returned to you. And what happened?
So, did you say that she did get tested for different health issues? Oh, that's what I was going to tell you. I don't think anybody is accusing you on here at all. I think they're um
Oh, I don't mind it. I don't mind questions. Definitely. Sometimes information can be misdrew, and the fact that people ask questions just to clarify is totally fine.
okay. Yeah, it does not sound at all like it's done in a accusatory way. It
Okay.
just sounds like they're asking if she bruises easily or whatever. Um so did she get tested for any medical issues?
Yes, I did talk a little bit about that. I don't know if that was a time that you had to recuse yourself for a second. Um, but yes, she did get tested for anemia when she got moved to my parents' house. Um, she was there about a month when they redid her full physical, and it did end up coming back that she was just like me, borderline anemic, and they actually did prescribe her iron for a month, and they went back and retested, and my parents maneuvered their diet um, to include more iron-rich foods. So when they retested her, it was at a better level, so they didn't re-prescribe her, as far as I understand. Um, but I didn't know whether or not she was anemic before she was removed. And because she was with more health conscious people, like the first 6 to 9 months, um, she was with a foster family. It ended when they tested her the first time when I had first brought it up. Um, she it,
When did they give you visits?
they started about a week, little less than a week after the initial removal. So she was removed on Thursday. I believe it was a Thursday, and I started visits that next Friday. And for about 2 months, I had only one visit a week, and it was 2 hours, and it was supervised at the CPS office. And then I got moved up to 2 visits a week. It started with the foster parent, and I would have to drive up about an hour away from where I live because they lived about an hour away from the place that we would meet. So we kind of just met in the middle. And then when she got moved to my parents' house, it was a lot easier to see her because I didn't have to drive so far. And we were able to pick like different days and times. And I still got a 2 hour visit, an extra 2 hour visit aside from my ones at the CPS office. I never got off of unsupervised visits. They were always supervised. And the social worker that I ended up having, she was my second social worker. I had her for almost 10 months, and she eventually ended up getting fired from that office because she wasn't doing her job correctly. There was a point where, and it happened actually multiple times, where we would have, 2, 3, 4 hour meetings, and she would have less than a page of notes. And so, if she was in, and honestly, like the way that she acted in our meetings, she didn't seem like the person who had the greatest memory of what somebody would say. So if she wasn't, taking proper notes and wasn't able to put them in their system properly, the person that ended up taking her place probably didn't, there was no way that she could have done her job properly.
Right.
So, but I never got off of unsupervised visits, which means I never got overnights. I never got any unsupervised visits, nothing. Everything was supervised when I was with my daughter. My lawyer never fought for unsupervised visits or overnights or anything like that. So
that's crazy.
my lawyer was just an awful person.
Yeah. And it was a court-appointed attorney, right?
It was.
And did your fiance have an attorney, or just not allowed to be part of the case, period?
So he had a criminal appointed attorney, but whenever I would advocate for him to have any kind of visit with my daughter, they would always say, oh, well, he's not part of the case, so he never had an attorney for the family, for the
right.
family courts stuff. Because I was lied to, saying that I couldn't put him, like when I had talked about the paperwork that I had originally signed with CPS, they told me that I had to, like there was no choice, I had to put her biological father on there. I could not put my fiance on any of the paperwork. So when I started advocating for him to get visits with my daughter, I would just get told, we can't do that, because blah, blah, blah reason for, whatever. And they gave me so many different reasons. But there was one point where my social worker that I had for that 9 or 10 months, she had sat down with both of us and talked to my fiance and saw that he wasn't this awful, horrible person that they were trying to make him out to be. And was like, oh, well, do you want to see her? Like, she straight up asked, do you want to see her? And he's like, yeah, more than anything. And so we started working on a safety plan. Like, she understood that, oh, we're not breaking up. And so now we need to move it to family reunification.
Did she ever say anything negative about your fiance?
Before she actually had talked to him, she had told me straight up multiple times, you have to break up with him. You have to break up with him. Like, there was no choice in the matter. Like, you have to break up with him or you're not going to get your daughter back. And then once she actually had sat down and spoke with him, and he had told her, like, I did this,
but this was
that.
The social worker, right?
Yes, this was my second social worker.
But I'm asking if your daughter ever said anything negative about your fiance.
No. Nope. She had actually told the foster parents, because there was a point where my daughter would spend weekends with my parents as like a transition, and she had gone back to the foster parents and was like, oh, well, we had played baseball, because she had like this little t-ball set, And oh, we played t-ball and we went to the car shows and blah blah blah, which we didn't, you know, because he wasn't allowed to see her. But she was reminiscing on all of the good things that we did. We went to car shows, we played outside, we went to the park, you know, we did all kinds of things with her. And she had started talking about those things with the foster parents. And even to this day, um, he's still not allowed to talk to her. He's not allowed to, you know, see her on FaceTime. My parents have since moved to Texas with court's approval.
With
Before
her?
any, with her, yeah. Um,
What state are you in?
California.
They were allowed to move her out of state?
Yeah, I actually ended up going to a court date while my stuff was going through the Court of Appeals, um, because there was some jurisdiction issue where they had finalized the adoption without jurisdiction. The Napa court system had finalized the adoption without jurisdiction, and so my attorney had to go and do all of that stuff and get our jurisdiction back. And so they stayed the adoption, and I was made, I was basically forced to leave the courtroom because they knew that if they started talking about moving my daughter out of state, I would have said something in that courtroom. And that was just a few months ago. And my parents had all of their stuff packed up from their house, ready in a truck, ready to drive down to Texas.
Did Are your parents against you?
Yes.
Why?
Because I mean, at least my mom is. I know for sure that my mom is. Um, but my dad basically just follows my mom. Um, so
Why is she against you?
because her and I have we have a toxic relationship, and she doesn't like the fact that I'm fighting. She wants to believe that me and my fiance abused my daughter. She wants to believe that all of these awful things happened when they didn't. When I was pregnant with my daughter after her biological father left me, I was I was 5 months pregnant when my daughter's father left me. Um, and I really thought that, you know, I was in love with him and I really cared for him so much, and
Yeah.
I was in such an awful place mentally when he left, and I had considered adoption. And my mom didn't like that. Even though when I told her that I was pregnant, she got mad at me.
Music off of the door.
So, you know, within a 4 month span, or it was only 3 months,
Yeah.
within a 3 month span time period, she had completely changed her mind. She doesn't like being called grandma.
What does she want to be called?
She's Mima. It's Mima and Papa for my parents. And, you know, she absolutely, you know, adores my daughter. She does. She very much cares for my daughter, and I believe that. You know, I believe that my daughter is, you know, she has the necessities as far as her clothes, her food. You know, she receives a lot of love from my parents, but at the same time, I don't think that because they sit her in front of a TV or they sit her in front of, she has to play by herself when while she's at my parents, you know, and it's been that way for almost 2 years now, that she's the only little kid there. She, for a year, she didn't go to school, so she was like by herself in my parents' home, which I didn't even want her to go to in the first place. But because the foster parents were saying, oh, we're having a lot of scheduling issues because a new semester of school was starting. We were, but I didn't want her to go to my parents' house
Right.
because their house was just disgusting.
Why?
The bathtub was covered in mold. All of the grout was molded and gross, black. It was black.
Did they check that? Like, did
Yeah,
they,
and they were still certified to get my daughter there. There was
how?
mold growing in her room. There was mold in there was basically mold in all of the rooms. My parents never like shampooed their carpets, so whenever you would walk around barefoot or even with socks on, the bottoms of your feet would get so disgustingly dirty. It was awful. And then because their plumbing was so bad, in the only bathroom that they had a shower in, my daughter was only able to take a shower or a bath like once a week. Yeah. And when I told CPS all of this and told them, I don't want her to go to my parents' house because of all of this mold, they're like, oh, well, their house was certified. We've seen her room. We've seen the bathroom.
Bathtub.
I have pictures of all of it. And when I had brought it all up to CPS, they were like, oh, well, their house was certified and we saw all of the rooms that you're talking about and we don't see anything wrong with them. And I'm like, I lived in the room that she's in. The shower that they ended up having to take out in one of the bathrooms leaked into that room and they never replaced the carpet. They never had it professionally cleaned. They never even ran over it with their own like carpet cleaner. They never rented one, they never bought one, and they never changed anything from it. They just put her dresser over it and hid all of the mold so CPS wouldn't see it.
Wow.
So she always smelled really musty and she smelled dirty, like she hadn't taken a bath because she would only take a shower or a bath once a week.
When did you smell that?
Almost every single visit. Her clothes would be so musty. And then there were times where, her body odor would just overpower the must because she hadn't showered in a week. And when I brought all of that to CPS, they didn't do anything. And I there were times where I wouldn't even want to bring friends over. But I got so tired sometimes of just always going to a friend's house. Like growing up, I always got so tired of just going to my friend's house and I wanted to be home that I just put up with it and we sat in my room. And even my friends, to this day, remember my parents' house being just so disgusting. And then my daughter lived in that. And it makes me so mad that she had to endure what I did as a child.
Right. Are you aware of, do you know who kidnapped my kids?
I did watch the previous one, and I believe you said that your mom did.
Yep.
Like your mom had a lot to do with all of that. I think you said.
Do you know who Farron, I think Catherine is?
Yeah.
Okay, she says your mom's house is always like that.
And she remembers how my mom used to be like as a person, just as a person. And my mom, and she remembers, because we talk about it, we still talk about it, that my mom and our relationship as mother and child has always just been so toxic, so codependent, and just bad. It was bad. It's always been bad. And, you know, and she's the one who basically has all of the control over my daughter. Even just last week, I was on a video chat with my daughter, and she's like, "Oh, I didn't want to move to Texas. Papa said that we could see you one last time before we left, and Mima said no." And she just got really upset, saying that she didn't want to move to Texas, that she
Sounds,
wanted to be home with me and my fiance and her brother.
sounds
And
so much like my case.
what?
It sounds so much like my case.
I mean, it's awful what CPS does to these families. And what's even worse is personally, my case, there was a previous case that had happened a few years back, where a small child died at the hands of her mother and her boyfriend. And the year that they were convicted, for her death, um, and CPS got sued by the paternal grandparents of the child, and they won a significant amount of money from the city and from CPS. It was that same year that the parents were convicted, or the mother and the boyfriend were convicted, and the paternal grandparents had won their case, that my case happened. And so because they lost so much money, I think it was in the millions that they lost.
Who?
CPS in the city. They had
Where
to,
did that case happen?
in Napa County.
What year was it?
So the trials were in 2017. I believe the actual case may have happened between 2013 and 2015. I don't know exactly what year the child passed. I just know that I knew the mother, um, and she was actually friends with my older sister.
So that's the same year my case happened.
Was 2017?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think a lot of parents in Napa County went through CPS, shortly after the child had passed, and then after the paternal grandparents had won their case against CPS in the county or the city, because CPS didn't do anything. There were so many phone calls to go check the child. Police officers had seen bruises on that child. It was awful. It was awful. Awful. But I think shortly after the child had passed, and then after the grandparents had won their lawsuit against CPS and the city, that they really just like dug in with so many families. Because, like I said, 2017 was the year that, the grandparents had won, and then my case was right there at the end of the year. And it was like out of the blue that they just showed up at the school and took my daughter, and here I am.
Yep.
You know, and
Good.
then it's like they didn't bring up like the things that I learned, or, you know, talked about like in any of the reports. um they only focused on bad things, and they twisted things and lied about things. Even my own mom, she had told a social worker that I had spanked my daughter at a visit at her house when I didn't. And that's when I really found out that my mom, for sure, like 100%, was against me getting my daughter back. And she sat there. I brought it up to her, and she sat there and lied straight to my face, saying, "Oh, I didn't do that. I didn't do that. Why would I do that when you never did?" And I'm like, "I don't know. You
Is
tell me."
this expected for your relationship with her, or is this weird, like crazy?
Me and my mom have always had a very bad relationship.
Like what?
She didn't like the fact that I would stand up for myself and argue with her. Um, like, so me and my older sister are the same in that way. We never took any of her crap. Excuse me. We never took anything bad that she did to us. Like, we would stand up for ourselves. And me and my older sister have really bad relationships with my mother. But my two younger sisters have an awesome relationship with her. Because they kind of just took it. They took all of her, I don't even know the words for it. It's just, they just, I don't know. But like, because I would call my mom out on what she was doing. Like, my mom drinks a lot. Um, she she doesn't like when people tell her that she's wrong. And when I would do that, it would just cause this whole huge argument. And then when I found out I was pregnant with my daughter, she was mad because she didn't want to be called grandma. And that was like her main reason, is because she didn't want to be called grandma. And when my daughter's dad left, and I told my mom, I'm considering adoption. I want to look into adoption agencies, this, that, and the other. She would get very mad. And there was one point where she even threatened legal action to get my daughter to her. Um, and, I was just like, there's nothing that you can do. You don't have any legal rights over her.
What and when did you decide to keep her?
Well, it wasn't like a decision that I was going to adopt her out. It was more, it was only a consideration. I was just looking into it, researching adoptions. And I even told my mom, I was like, even if I were to, go through talking to people, talking to families, there would I mean, who's to say that when that baby would be born, that I would just be like, no, I'm going to keep my daughter, the adoptions off, all of this.
Right.
And I told her that. I told her that so many times. Like, you don't know what my mental state is going to be. And it was shortly after my daughter's dad left that I was just considering this. I only considered it really for like 2 or 3 months. And then I was like, this is my child. This is my child. She's not going anywhere. She's not going anywhere. And my mom, she would get so mad, and she would bring it up every single time, like, oh, where are you with all of this adoption stuff? And I'm like, Mom, it's only a consideration. I'm still thinking about it. I'm still only looking into things. I never contacted any agencies. So, and she knew that. She knew I never contacted anybody, and she would still get so mad about it. And, you know, like I said, I really only considered it for a few months, and then it was, she's not going anywhere. You know, it was, yeah, it was a consideration. And, but once I realized, like, just because her father left doesn't mean that I can't do this on my own. Like, I had finally gotten out of that mental fog of, oh, I want her dad to come back. I want this relationship. I want this family that we had talked about. And once I kind of just got over him leaving, is when that consideration just went out the window. It's done. She's not going anywhere. So, you know, and then there were just things I would tell her and my dad, you know, because they would let her get away with so much at their house. And if I would say no, my parents were like, oh, don't worry about it. You can do whatever you want here. And I'm sitting there like, I'm sitting right here. You know, if you guys are babysitting and I'm not there, it's different. Right. But I'm sitting right there. And you're going to undermine me as her mother right in front of her, right in front of me. What is that going to teach her? That's going to teach her that she can do it. So I had talked to my mom about that on so many different occasions because it was just not okay that they were doing it.
Did I tell you what my mom had my kids call her?
No, but I think I can take a guess.
What?
Did she try and get your kids to call her mom?
See, she did. And one time my daughter was talking to me on the phone and she thought she put me on mute and she said, Graham, Graham. And you could hear my mom and she said, you know what to call me if you want to get a response.
Oh my gosh.
I was all,
I would have, oh gosh, I can only imagine what you felt.
I was just so grateful I had a witness in the car that heard it.
I would have been so mad hearing that. Definitely. Oh my. I mean, but it's, I mean, CPS just going out of their way to actively keep my daughter away from me.
Yeah.
And then my parents helping them, you know?
Yep. So.
I don't know. And then the appeals courts, my parents knowing that I was going through appeals, and I would talk to my mom like, you know, my daughter's coming home. My daughter is coming home. And I even have text messages of her saying, she's not going home. She's not going home to you. Like my mom sitting there telling me that she knows that my daughter is not going to be coming home to me. And I was like, you don't know that. You don't know how courts are going to go. You don't know what court's going to say. Nothing. But she sat there every single time saying, your daughter's not coming. You're not getting your daughter back. You're not getting your daughter back. And it sucks because for the longest time, I did not want to believe, you know, even though my in-laws and my fiance are sitting there telling me, you can't trust your parents. You can't trust your parents. And, you know, they had preached to me my whole life, you know, family is everything. Family is everything. You do everything that you can for family. And then as soon as this happens, I'm basically shut out.
Yeah.
I got kicked off of my family's property. Like
I'm not
it was my
I'm not laughing because I'm just like it blows I get it.
Yeah. So when me and my fiance got arrested, my aunt, I had gotten home at like 2 o'clock in the morning. My aunt was there as soon as I walk in the door, bang, 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 bang on the door, calling me nasty names. And then the next day as well, sitting there calling me names, calling me stupid. You should have given her to me. And because when I was considering adoption, she's like, oh, we'll give her to me and my fiance, and then when you feel like you're ready to have her, we'll give her back to you, and everything will be fine. And so I was like, I'm so glad that I didn't, because obviously you wouldn't have given her back to me. But she's sitting there saying, oh, you're so stupid for letting this happen, and calling me all these awful names, saying that I should have given my daughter to her. um, and then telling me that, oh, you need to pack clothes for you and your fiance because you guys are not living here anymore. And then my dad shut me out for a while. Um, and then I haven't heard from any of my mom's side of the family in almost 3 years. Everybody on my mom's side of the family has just shut me out. So the only person from my family that I talk to that supports me is my dad's mom, my grandma. And she even tells me, because my grandpa had passed earlier in 2017, before all of this happened.
Is it your mom's mom or dad's mom?
My dad's mom.
At least you have one person who's in your corner from family because
She's the only one. But she tells me, your grandpa, would be in your corner. I know he would. And because they were so similar, him and my grandmother. They were just similar people, and that's why they were together for as long as they were, before he passed, um, and why their relationship was so great. Uh,
right.
and she tells me whenever I talk to her, this is so awful, and if your grandfather was here, he would just,
Make it right.
yeah, because I mean, it would. It was funny because when we had first visited him after my daughter was born, he straight up told me, you're not my best. He used to call me his bestest girl. And he's like, you're not my bestest girl anymore. I love you. And, but this little girl is my bestest girl. And he knew I would never do anything to hurt her intentionally, ever, ever. And, my grandma always tells me, if your grandpa was here, he would be right there with me in your corner, doing what we could for you. And so, but she's the only one on my side of the family that is in my corner. It's all my fiance's side of the family, my in-laws, his grandparents, his grandmothers. Um, they know, like my brother-in-law and his girlfriend as well, and they're actually like licensed social workers, and they were like, they took her, why, on unfounded allegations. What? Because they worked in San Francisco, and they would see kids that looked like they were thrown through walls, and they wouldn't take them away from their parents.
Yeah, it's just like trying to get a restraining order. I tried to get one against my husband. He had threatened to kill me. I had proof, I had witnesses, but because he didn't give specific details on how he would do it, I couldn't get a restraining order.
Oh my gosh.
Um, Somebody asked, did your parents and CPS get involved with your son? And clearly
Yes,
you have
they
said
tried to anyway.
you told
So
them, so they didn't. And that's what always makes me so angry when I see that they think you're a good enough parent for one child, but not the other one.
your sound is going out again.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you a little bit.
Really? I don't understand. I'm not even doing anything.
So that's why I'm like, so they did get involved with my son. Um, I had, with the day that I had him, um, I had told my parents, obviously, so we could try and get my daughter to come and see him. And I was like, I told my mom, you don't call CPS yet, because me and my fiance still needed to talk about things, about whether or not we would allow my mom into the visiting room, um, to see my son. And she's like, well, why? Why does he have a say? And I'm like, really? Like, this is your grandson's father. Like, they are actually tied by DNA, and you're asking me why he has a say on whether or not you can see his son? She didn't like that. She didn't like it at all. And then, so he was born on a Sunday. My dad and one of my younger sisters came Monday morning to see him. And then I had talked to my mom, because he had gone into the NICU, because he was a C-section baby, and his body was not getting rid of the extra fluid in his lungs. So he had to go into the NICU for a few days. And before he went into the NICU, I called my mom, and we were talking about, that's when we had talked about, hold off on calling CPS. And, I have to talk to Jonathan, all this, that, and the other. And then he ended up going into the NICU. I talked to her again, saying, okay, still don't call the social worker, because I need to get verification that you guys can even go into the NICU to see him. Because I had no idea whether or not they could. And so
Right.
Tuesday morning, we ended up having a social worker come in, but she was only there to check on me and my fiance, because I guess it was like protocol to have somebody go check on the parents, when their child goes into the NICU. So she wasn't there to talk about my open case with my daughter, um, or anything like that. She was just checking on us mentally, like, were we good? Um, and then Wednesday, an actual Napa County social worker came to my room. I had put out on the door, and I even told the nurses, I don't want anybody to come in here
Yeah.
unless you guys let me know. I didn't get any kind of, no nurses came in, nothing. And she let herself in. And and I wasn't mad at the nurses, because they were like, we're so sorry. Nobody was at the nurses station, nothing. Even though there was something on my door saying nobody's allowed in without a nurse's consent or having talked to the patient. But she let herself in. She introduced herself, and she came with the previous social worker that had come in to check on us. And, she had asked a bunch of questions. She had actually made my fiance go out and get my son's car seat so she could see it, which I thought was really weird.
Yeah.
Um, and she talked to me, and, almost like she was trying to get rid of him to see if I would divulge any kind of
Information.
domestic violence situation. Like, no, there's none of that, ever. He's never laid a hand on me, ever. But then he comes in, she sees the car seat, and she asks, oh, well, can I see your son? And at the time, I didn't think anything of it. Like, she just wanted to see him. And then we get in there, I'm holding him, and all of a sudden, I see her phone for a split second, and then she puts it away. And I later found out that she had, I mean, it was pretty obvious at the time, she had taken a picture of my son. And I wasn't about to make up, but she didn't even come back to my room, so I couldn't confront her in private about it. And she's like, all right, well, you know, let me know when you guys get home, and then we'll, you know, we'll go from there. And then contact me again in about 2 weeks when you guys settle in. I was discharged on Thursday, but I was able to say, I was able to stay in the room until Friday morning when he was discharged. He had gotten the all clear from the pediatric doctor on call, or that was doing the rounds that day in the NICU, that he was good to go home. He was doing really well, so he got discharged that Friday. And we were discharged at about 10:30 in the morning, and she shows up, the social worker shows up at my house at like 4:30 the same day, saying, oh, well, we need to have a family team meeting, and we need to do this, and you need to get all of the parents together, all of your parents together, and we need to do a family team meeting to discuss next steps. And I was like, well, why? And she's like, well, it's just what we have to do. And she didn't even give me a straight answer about it. She was dodging that question the whole time. And the whole time I'm standing in my doorway, and we live in an apartment, and so my front door is really weird. It is actually a sliding glass door, like a back door would be, but it's my front door. It's really weird that they use sliding glass doors for this apartment complex.
Yeah.
But it's like, whatever.
How do you lock it?
Like a sliding glass door would, it's got that little flippy thing.
But how do you lock it when you leave?
It's got a little an outside lock for like a key. It's weird. It's really weird. But and I didn't have it, you know, but like my shoulder width apart open, and I'm holding my son, and my blinds are closed up to where the door is open. And this woman, this social worker, is legitimately shifting back and forth to try and look into my home. And I'm shifting with her. Yeah, she's sitting there kind of like, she'll sit like this for a minute, and then she would sit like this for a minute, like standing right outside my door, trying to look into my home to get something like, oh, like to go to court to remove my son. That, and then I was like, well, we're not doing anything without a lawyer. And I literally, the first day that she showed up, I had to say that like 5 or 6 times before she actually left. And then she shows up that Monday, again, around 3, or it was between 4:30 and 5 o'clock that she had showed up again on Monday, doing the same thing, saying, oh, well, we have to have a family team meeting to discuss next steps and do this, that, and the other, and you guys have to get your parents together. And again, 10 plus times I'm telling her, we're not doing anything without a lawyer present. We're not doing anything without a lawyer present. And she's like, okay, well, that's your right. That's your right. And every time I would say it, that's what she would say. And we even told her, you know, our parents do not get along. They're not going to sit in the same room without an argument starting. There's just no way. And so after that, I never heard anything from that social worker again. And then we go to court for the 12-month review hearing. And it's in the report that I didn't cooperate with an investigation. Yeah. So they're basically sitting there saying that, oh, well, we tried to investigate neglect on general neglect accusation.
And you didn't
And
cooperate.
I wasn't cooperating. So, but then I was like thinking to myself, and I was talking to my fiance about it, and I was like, how can they get a general neglect accusation when my son is less than a week old? Or at the time, he was less than a week old when she showed up at my home. How can they sit there and get a general neglect? It was just ridiculous. And then I was like, I even almost brought it. What?
Somebody asked, how old were you when all of this happened?
So 26. So, oh God. I was about 25, 26 when my daughter was removed. Or no. Gosh darn it.
How old are you right now?
27, I think. I don't even remember how old I am.
You don't know how old you are right now?
I know, that sounds ridiculous.
What year were you born?
92. So I'm 27. 27?
Yeah, you're 27.
So yeah, so when they came to my home after my son was born, I was 26 going into 27. And then when all of the stuff was happening with my daughter, I was 24, I think. 23 or 24. 25? But yeah, I was in my mid to early 20s when my daughter was removed. And then 26 going into 27 when they showed up at my home when my son was a week old.
What would you say to people who are going through this?
Educate yourself. Don't always listen to your lawyer, especially if you ask them to say something in court and they don't.
Right.
I actually started a YouTube channel last year, and I started a little series about CPS. And one of them was, you know, make sure that you educate yourself on what they're allowed to say, what they're allowed to do, what you're allowed to do, and what you, if things are with your lawyer, if things are not, you feel like your lawyer is not acting in your best interest, fire your lawyer or hire your own and have them put in a motion for that lawyer to be dismissed.
Yep.
Because that's what was happening in my case, and I thought I thought I was stuck with her. I did. I thought that, well, crap, I'm stuck with this lawyer. And she's not acting in my best interest at all. You know, if she had brought up the fact that my fiance had done all of these classes and the fact that my second social worker, who I had for almost 10 months was fired for not doing her job properly, I honestly do believe that I would have my daughter in my custody. I really do believe that,
Yep.
because I think that those were such important things, and because they were saying, oh, well, he's not safe for her to be around, this, that, and the other about my fiance. And then the fact that it was never brought up by my attorney that he did anything. And she was even saying, oh, you have to get rid of the boyfriend. You have to get rid of the boyfriend, um, because he's not a part of the case. And I even told her, I was like, he's doing these things to help me get her home and for
Well,
him to be a part of her life.
and he's the father of your other child.
Right, that too.
Like, they're making it. It's really annoying. I'm sure you're even more annoyed.
Yeah. And the whole time, throughout everything, my whole CPS case, nothing ever went my way. Ever. Everything was just against me all the time, because my attorney didn't act in my best interest. And so anybody who is currently going through something like this, or just having interactions with CPS, if your attorney for you in your CPS case is just not acting in your best interest, get rid of them.
Right. Agreed.
It's definitely, and educate yourself. Ask a lot of questions. Don't believe everything that CPS is telling you.
Who would you suggest asking questions from?
If you trust your lawyer, ask your lawyer. Um, Look up things on Google. I just started doing that, and there was this website that I actually had posted on a group that I started. It's a support group for people that have gone through CPS, or are going through CPS. You can request a court date within 72 hours of the removal of your child, and you can demand your child back. Like, you do all of this, you request the court date, you do all of this stuff, and you demand your child back, because that is your child. You have the right to raise your child. And I think separation of, what was it? It's like the separation of state and religion, um, is a huge thing too,
Right. Like,
because
go ahead.
certain cultures raise their kids differently.
Yeah.
So, if it's part of your religion to do certain things, then they can't do anything. And
Well,
another
that's
thing,
not true, because whether it's legal or not, they told me I was not allowed to pray with my children.
yeah, they're definitely not allowed to tell you that. Nobody can tell you that. Nobody. And it is illegal for them to do that. And they're getting away with the most, literally, it is unethical for them to do half of the stuff that they're doing. Like, I'm actually going to school to be a human service provider. And even in substance abuse, there are a lot of ethical things that you have to abide by, and that you can get in trouble for not abiding by these ethical things. And the fact that CPS basically has immunity to do whatever they want is awful, because They do. They literally do whatever they want.
You're right.
It's
I
horrible.
see questions in other groups all the time. Who can I talk to that's above CPS? I'm like, no one.
There is an ombudsman for CPS,
Yeah,
but
but
they don't necessarily do anything because they only look at what CPS reports. They don't look at any court documents. They don't look at anything. They only look at what CPS reports, because my mother-in-law, or my soon-to-be mother-in-law, actually reported to the ombudsman, and I get a call from them saying that, okay, well, we can only talk to you, um, and we can't do anything because we looked into CPS's reports and we didn't find anything wrong with what they're doing. And I was like, you're literally only looking at what CPS is reporting. You're not talking to me. You didn't ask me if what they're reporting is true, or, if they spun it, or if they're lying about anything, or, all of the good things that have happened. It's, it, it's just ridiculous what CPS is allowed to get away with.
I would agree. So, well, let me know when there's an update.
As of right now, everything is closed. I mean, I need to get the funds to get a lawyer to sue CPS for mishandling my case because of everything that they've done, all of the unethical things that they've done. But with what I'm making as a veteran who's going to school, it gets really difficult.
I'm sure.
But that's where it's at right now.
Well, maybe doing your story on here will open up doors for somebody to take your case. I have had that happen.
That would be absolutely amazing, because finding a pro bono lawyer in California is next to impossible.
I know.
It really is.
Trust
So,
me. I know. I called over like 50 attorneys.
yeah, I've emailed probably
What?
that many.
So,
I'm even trying to find a lawyer for a class action against my lawyer, because so many other moms have had this lawyer that have done the same thing. She talks down to them. She doesn't act in their best interest. And you had a friend of mine on here just the other day, Cheyenne.
yeah.
And she had the same lawyer as I did. And she was telling you, how she was being just completely talked down to. And I was like, oh my gosh, so many moms have had this lawyer, and she just never, ever acted in anyone's best interest. There have been moms that would get their children back, but they had a different lawyer when they got their children back, because that other lawyer really did fight for them to get their children back and acted in their best interest. So,
Yeah.
hopefully, though,
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you sharing your story with us.
Thank you, and thank you for having me on here and hearing my story.
Of course. All right.
Somebody's watching too. Hello. Okay. Thank you so much. I hope you guys have a great rest of your day.
Sounds good. Thank you. You too.
Thank you so much.
All right.
Bye-bye.